I found all sorts down here, and I just wanted to show you. This is one of the things that I've found.
Oh my God, that was a Smash Hits moment, wasn't it?
I don't know. No, I just happened to have it here.
Oh, right. Didn't
children.
you and Steve Bush, the designer, didn't we have a photo session with the two of you with
I think
Sooty?
we did a thing on Smash Hits. I can't remember if it was actually published or we just did it in a dummy, which is the idea of Sooty and Sweep review the singles.
That's right.
We were talking about this the other day.
Oh yes.
Fill your head with rock.
That's the violinist from Flock. Am I right?
Whose name was? Come on, Jerry Goodman.
Okay.
Jerry Goodman. Didn't he join the Mahavishnu Orchestra? I think he did. I think he did. Anyway, the double album that came after Fill Your Head with Rock actually featured the future governor of California on the cover. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, I do, yeah. Arnie.
Rockbuster with Arnold Schwarzenegger on the cover. And this has got It's a Beautiful Day, Blood, Sweat and Tears. It's got Miles Davis from Bitches Brew. It's got Trees, of course, because you always had to have trees on a CBS sample.
Where are they now?
Well, no, I think they're quite cool nowadays, aren't they? They're sort of.
I just wondered what they were actually doing.
Oh, I don't know. They're probably still.
I don't know.
Probably like all these groups, they're still around.
So in Chiswick, there was a member of Rare Earth that used to run the antique shop in Chiswick High Road.
No, I think you got that wrong. Rare Bird.
Rare Bird. Sorry, you're absolutely right.
Because Rare Earth were on Motown, weren't they? I think they were. So I've found quite a few others in Sampler's Corner here.
What did you pay for it? 14 and 6.
14 and 6. And
I love that.
To eat.
Which is where I discovered Nick Drake, because it's got him on there, as if from Five Leaves Left. It's got Jethro Tull. It's got Heavy Jelly. It's got 40,000 Headmen.
It's got Heavy Jelly. It's got Sing Me a Song That I Know by Blobwind Pig from their album Head Rings Out. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah. And it's got Doctor Strangely Strange. Possibly their only major high point. Isn't it on there, Doctor Strangely Strange? Strange but oddly normal.
Strangely strange but oddly normal.
Yeah.
That's it's fantastic stuff, and it's I'm glad to say that it's finally coming in handy. I also found, I tell you what, we were talking about it the other day. I can't remember. We were talking about the 50th anniversary of it's Ladies of the Canyon, wasn't it? We were talking about it was 50th anniversary of that, and we looked at the other albums that came out the same week, amongst which were 10 years after Cricklewood Green. But also this.
The Wolf King of LA, isn't it? Yeah,
John Phillips, the Wolf King of LA, which of course you may see a resemblance between that,
absolutely,
Bob Dylan's Desire. Can you see?
And there's about what would it be? About a 6-year difference between them. One came out in 1970. One came out in
1970.
Yeah. I found a Smash Hits. I was just tidying up in the attic, and I found a Smash Hits that had Neil Tennant singles reviews.
Oh, go on. What year are we talking about?
Let me have a look.
Mark, it's all tangents.
It's all tangents. This is the 2nd of February, 1948.
1948? 1948?
1948. God's sake, 1984.
Oh, now is that famous girl? Oh, God.
That's the girl who was on the. Do you remember her?
Oh, I do.
Oh my Lord!
She was a competition winner. That is possibly the most accidentally sleazy copy of Smash Hits ever.
Too long a story to tell, but a girl who was on the cover of Smash Hits wanted Jim to fix it for her to be on the cover of Smash Hits.
Oh,
we're not going into that story.
When you got in touch with her, wasn't she bunking off school?
She was bunking off school. That's right. I know.
It was tribulation everywhere you looked on that story, wasn't it?
No, it was absolutely terrible. But I was looking through this issue, and it had Neil Tennant singles reviews, which are great. And there's one here. He's reviewing Michael Caine. by Madness.
Oh, right.
It says, pop stars singing songs about film stars is obviously the new thing. Bananarama have apparently just recorded a song called Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
And here's Madness with a whimsical tune about the star of Ipcris File and Alfie. No doubt we can soon expect Duran Duran to come up with Sean Connery and the Lotus Eaters to produce a rather sensitive tribute to Julie Andrews with an accompanying video shot in the Austrian Alps, while the Thompson twins deliver a fearful Klaus Kinski.
No, I'm sorry, Neil. I'm sorry, Neil. That is the sound of padding.
It's padding. Will this do?
We've all done this. We've all
maybe
done
the Three
this.
Stooges.
Keep going. End of the column.
This new Madness single is world weary and melancholy, although it's brightened up by the man himself declaring, "I am Michael Caine" every now and then. I like it, actually.
It's funny. Great. It's funny how he associates Michael Caine with, what is it, Alfie and Ipcris File.
Yeah.
Not the Italian Job. And if you were to do it, if you do it nowadays, that would be the
one you'd immediately go
first thing that people reach for, isn't it? You know.
When he went over to do Star Hits. Do you remember there was an American version of Star Hits, which he launched in America? And he reviews a single by Lolliata Holloway. Love Sensation, and he said, I first heard this in a dingy New York nightclub, one of those clubs that you can't even think of going to until 2 a.m. Not only because that would be extremely uncool, but because the club wouldn't actually be open until then. There are some nightclubs in New York which don't open until 4. This, of course, means that you're absolutely shattered and wondering how on earth you're going to be able to get up for work in the next few hours. This record caused the tightest crush on the dance floor and sounds as exhilarating in Carnaby Street at 4 p.m. as it did in 49th Street at 3 a.m. That's a rather sweet way of kind of giving the teenage reader some indication of what adult life might be like. I know.
What Neil was up to.
Neil was up to in New York clubs, I know. And here's Paul Weller's top 10 guitarists. Amazing. Wilco Johnson, Pete Townsend, Stuart Adamson of the Skids, Eddie Phillips of The Creation. This is really educational stuff, don't you think? Sid Barrett, his 1967 work. So we're telling people in whatever this is, 1982, that they should be listening to Sid Barrett. Viv Albertine of the Slits, Steve Marriott, Dave Davies of the Kinks, the guitar work on Revolver by the Beatles, and myself. His other favourite guitarist is myself. It's fantastic. And also, here's another thing. Here's the thing about clubs. We're telling them about all the clubs, the 10 venues that played a crucial role in the evolution of rock. The Two Eyes Coffee Bar, the London Blues and Barrel House Club. It's interesting, isn't it? The Flamingo, Fillmore Ballroom. I think that's great that we were telling people, smash hits readers about stuff like that.
Well, you know, it's important to broaden people's horizons, isn't it? Really,
it is. And everyone thought it was all kind of just, gossip about Bananarama and song lyrics. You know,
there was very, very little gossip about Bananarama, really. Very little printable gossip about Bananarama.
Well, we were always having to say that Siobhan Fay and Bobby Bluebell of the Bluebells were falling out of a taxi at 2 o'clock in the morning, having been on the fizzy pop.
Hold this up. Do you know what this is?
Well, that looks like a reel-to-reel tape of something.
It's a reel-to-reel tape. And I have no way of knowing what's on it. Because
you've got
who's got a reel-to-reel tape? If you went to the BBC, they probably wouldn't have a reel-to-reel tape.
Doesn't it say there's no label on it saying what it is?
No, not at all. It's just a mystery. Occasionally I look at it and think, I wonder what that is. I wonder what it is. So I set you a challenge.
Go on.
Which is nominate an album cover, which was kind of very significant in its time, in kind of moving on our perception of popular music. And I don't mean stuff that wins design awards. I'm not bothered about that at all. It's just, what are those particular images? Shall I show you mine?
Go on, show. No, okay. You go first.
Okay, I'll go first. This is mine.
Oh, brilliant. God, I remember that.
John Mayall's Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton. Now, for anybody who's not familiar with it, I'll try and hold it there.
I remember that so vividly.
This comes out in 1966.
But Eric Clapton was reading the Beano.
No, Eric Clapton is, and that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Eric Clapton is reading the Beano. And you know, that's when I first became aware of Eric Clapton. He'd been a member of the Yardbirds, but he was just a bunch of blokes, you know, in suits who all had kind of similar haircuts or whatever. And it's only there when when he's a kind of featured player who gets his name on the cover. And also he's kind of, he's reading the Beano, therefore he's kind of crying out for attention, really, isn't he?
Yeah,
by reading the Beano. And my point is, the whole cult of Clapton, the whole cult of the guitar hero, starts with this. It starts with this. That's what made Eric Clapton a star. Not just that record, but also the fact that he was on the cover of that record reading the Beano, which is, a way of pretending that you're not paying attention to having your picture taken, but at the same time really paying attention.
Drawing the most attention to yourself. Everyone else is invisible.
Pulling focus, as they call it in Hollywood, I think. So I think that in its own way is a massively significant album cover. Would you agree?
I would totally agree.
Millard.
And I love the idea that he was reading the Beano, because it made the Beano immensely fashionable again. Because the Beano was something that you'd read, well, I can't remember how old I was when I came out, about 11 or something, but the Beano was something you kind of left behind.
Yeah, you left behind.
And the idea that he was also residing in a kind of a state of permanent adolescence,
I suppose,
or indeed childhood. Reading that was rather
and of course, next to him, John McVie. Fleetwood Mac, later to become John McVie at Fleetwood Mac, still to this day.
Yeah.
So, what have you got one?
I've got one, and I'm going to show you first of all a little tiny example of my old friend Ian Birch gave me this for a birthday.
Oh,
and that's an outtake from the session.
Oh wow!
And the session happened in February 1963 on the corner of, I think it was. West, it was in West Village, wasn't it? It was on the corner of West, was it West Street? I think so.
I don't know.
I've got this scribbled down somewhere. Jones Street in West 4th, that's right. Where Dylan and Suze Rotolo, the girl in the picture.
Have you got the finished
one?
Oh
yeah, sorry, the finished one. Here we are.
It's the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan.
The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan.
Which came out,
1963 in May.
Three.
Yeah. And they lived in the apartment nearby, and Don Hunstein, who was a CBS photographer, took that photograph very early in the morning. And I think it's absolutely phenomenal for various reasons. It was interesting things. It was a very cold morning, and Dylan insisted on wearing that particular jacket. So he's freezing to death. Suze Rotolo was wearing, underneath that coat, wearing one of her own jumpers, and one of his too. So she always said she looked like she was an Italian sausage. She was just embarrassed about how huge she looked. But for lots of reasons. One, I think it was incredible because it was the first sleeve I remember that wasn't really staged. Because up to that point, everything was staged, whether it was folk music or it was pop music, jazz music, whatever. Someone was put in a studio, and they had a photograph of them that was formal, and it was, here's a piece of entertainment. And this wasn't. This was in the real world. This was out there on the street, him and his girlfriend. And so you got the impression that it was about, it wasn't just entertainment. It was about something that connected you, which was with what was going on in the world, with what was going on in their worlds. And secondly, it was amazing, I think, because it's the first time I remember a non-musician being on a cover. Up till then, you'd always tended to have the band, hadn't you? Members of the band.
Yeah, that's true.
With his own girlfriend.
Yeah.
Which is also significant because With the Beatles came out the same year in 1963. And at that time, John Lennon had a wife who was being hidden from the public. He wasn't allowed to admit that he was married. You had to appear available. So there was Dylan with his girlfriend on the cover. And another reason I think it's significant is that Suze Rotolo changed pop music to, I think it was her influence that got him to go back. I mean, before he met her, he was writing songs like Song to Woody and Freight Train Blues. And when he split up with her, he was writing things like Mr. Tambourine Man. But in the middle, as on this record, he was writing Oxford Town and Hard Rain and, Masters of War. And he's writing all those political songs. And he her parents were members of the American Communist Party. She used to campaign for racial equality. He was terribly impressed by her. I think she was a year older than him, wasn't she?
Oh, was she really?
Immensely impressed by her, and he wanted to write songs that she would approve of, and so started writing these political songs. And that selection of songs that carried on for the next, 2 years that he was with her, really, I think formulated people's idea of what pop music was capable of doing.
Well, they've still got the idea. They've still got the idea about Bob Dylan, haven't they? Even all the years later, that he's a spokesman for a generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that all comes back to that time, and to
it's
her,
that image of Dylan with the acoustic guitar and the harmonica.
Yeah.
And the idea that pop music could change the world. It wasn't just Woody Guthrie who was doing the same sort of thing, but that was in a kind of local way. This was an international star producing music that might affect the way people thought, might affect the
I tell you what's the other
culture.
thing, which you can't help feeling sorry for her, that it completely dominated Suze Rotolo's rest of her life, didn't it?
It did.
That picture. She never got away from that. She's dead now, isn't she? She died.
She died in 2011, I think. Just after she put out an autobiography. Really fantastic. And then he wrote about her in Chronicles, really wonderfully. Remember that? Yeah. I think it's her when he talks about seeing her and he says, and suddenly the air was full of banana leaves. It was kind of, she was drop dead gorgeous.
But it's the idea, if you're caught up with somebody like that, for the rest of your life, you're a footnote in somebody else's.
Yeah.
The story of a really, really big person like that.
I know, like Jane Asher, who's had the good sense to never give an interview. But Jane Asher's a really good example.
Jane Asher has
done lots of very, very accomplished things.
Is she the only person in the whole Beatles story who hasn't written a book? Is she?
Probably.
I think she
They all have. The chauffeur did, didn't he, in the end?
The hairdresser did.
The hairdresser did.
I read the hairdresser.
Yeah, the minders, the roadies.
Absolutely everybody. And she has never said anything, has she, at all? Which is just remarkable.
Remarkable. I really admire her, because you think the temptation would be so huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking to the Beatles...
And she could have said some very unkind things about McCartney, of course.
It wouldn't be hard.
Because the circumstances of their breaking up were...
Oh, absolutely, yeah, all of that. Talking to the Beatles, this is the... I don't know why I'm plugging Craig Brown's book that's out this week, because my book, I've lost it.
You should be plugging your own.
Yeah, my book is out in paperback this week, A Fabulous Creation. But Craig Brown's book is out in hardback. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, The Beatles in Time. Yeah, I don't know. Did you read his Princess Margaret's book?
I did.
What's it called? Darling Mom.
It's called
Darling Mom.
Darling Mom.
Darling Mom, I think it's called.
It's just a series of anecdotes, isn't it? It's 99 stories about Princess Margaret. Just interesting things that happened.
Because presumably everybody who ever met Princess Margaret wrote about her in their memoirs. And I suppose something, as we were just saying, something similar applies to the Beatles. And so this does the same thing with the Beatles. And I found it's really very entertaining. I found it less surprising because obviously I know a lot of these, stories about the Beatles. But there were some I didn't know. For instance, and I actually, when I read this, I thought, he's pulling my leg. This didn't really happen. This is a Craig Brown gag being snuck in alongside the kind of, the genuine.
Which particular bit?
This was where he said that they were playing the Top 10 Club in Hamburg in 1961. And
you told me about this. Yeah, Malcolm Muggeridge is in the audience.
They looked down in the audience and who should be there but Malcolm Muggeridge? And for the benefit of kind of younger viewers, it's very difficult to describe who Malcolm Muggeridge was. He was a sort of iconoclastic commentator and TV presenter who was often on the television and on discussion programs. And he was kind of, I wouldn't say he was far right, but he was old school and a very disapproving
panorama.
Very disapproving of all aspects of the modern world, And so he wrote about meeting the Beatles before they were famous. And I thought, that can't be real. So I had to go and dig out. Took some doing. Malcolm Muggeridge's diaries. And sure enough, he did run into the Beatles in 1961. And it's just another example of, like Mark Lewis always says about the Beatles, the kind of, just the extraordinary, the kind of coincidences all through the entire Beatles story, you know, that they just intersect with absolutely everybody at some point or another. But that was
And
one.
then everybody they meet remembers it.
I suppose
Because
so.
it's the most significant thing, you know. Whereas for them, you know, the really significant thing was meeting Elvis Presley, because Elvis Presley was their absolute hero, wasn't he? And the interesting thing is, do you remember in the documentary
anthology,
they talk about meeting Elvis Presley, and all three of them had completely different memories.
Completely different memories, and
it's just amazing.
It's in here. He does quite a bit of this in the book, actually, and there are numerous incidents where even the eyewitnesses who were in the room completely disagree about actually what happened. But the Elvis Presley thing is really interesting because they can't think of anything to say to Elvis Presley. And it kind of, it bears out what you and I have often said about rock stars, that you don't want to talk to them, you just want to look at them.
You want to look at them. Just observe them.
And Elvis Presley, they just sit in the room and they look at Elvis, because they've only ever seen him in photographs or in film or whatever. And it's just absolutely magical to have him in the room, and he doesn't seem entirely normal human, you know. And so they're
really impressed by his remote controls. Do you remember that? He's got these remote controls for the TV, which no one else had. This was, and when did they meet him? 65, was it? I can't remember now. 64,
no, 66, I think.
Later, 66. And he's got these remote controls, and they're just so knocked out with his house and all his gadgets.
Yeah.
They're just starstruck, aren't they?
So don't forget the podcast. That's you can find that wordpodcast.co.uk. and use your suppliers, and we'd be delighted to hear from people, wouldn't we? Really,
we would
in our attics, and tell us what you're doing in your attics, and you know, you can do that in the comments under this. Don't forget to favorite this and subscribe to the channel and all that sort of stuff, because that really does make a lot of difference. What are you going to do now?
Now, well, God, as in the rest of the day, well, I've got my allocated hour that I'm allowed out. We're going out to the park. We're allowed out, get out to the park. Going to wander around. It's quite a sunny day here in Chiswick. And, you know, otherwise there's working out the exhaustive schedule of things to watch on the TV.
Actually,
Tiger King being the key thing. I don't know if you started watching Tiger King. Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
Tiger King is the new Netflix documentary. Brilliant.
I can't.
About these lunatics who've got these zoos, supposedly for the preservation of wild cats. Absolutely extraordinary stuff.
I can't settle to television really at all. Although last night I did watch Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy for about the third time, which I quite like. And you know, I spent hours zipping through Netflix thinking, what can I watch? What can I watch? And then I don't settle on anything at all. I just flick through.
It's hard to concentrate.
It's very hard to concentrate. I think I'll play with my puppet. Bye bye. Bye bye.